Ed, and welcome to Minisodes. Last week, after hitting the mini milestone of 1,000 subscribers, I made a poll on the community page asking what you'd like to see more of on the channel. When I checked the results over the weekend, lo and behold, it looks like you want me to paint some models. So, in between building a bike shed, going to work, and playing Warhammer, these Skaven got absolutely crushed here by the way, I did exactly that. One of the miniatures that captured my imagination when I was about 9 years old was the original Space Marine Landspeeder. The heavy metal paint job with the banner billowing out is fantastic, and so too is the depiction of it on the cover of War Gear, zooming over the Blood Angels battle line. Now, the actual model is perhaps somewhat underwhelming in the flesh, but it is very old, and I've got a few ideas up my sleeve on how to reinvigorate it. Fortunately, it had been put together using superglue, so it came apart pretty easily. I put all of the components in a jar and bathed them in isopropyl alcohol, which I left to marinate overnight. The next morning, I sat down to scrub the paint off with an old toothbrush. Most of the acrylic lifted off quite easily and revealed a surprising amount of detail on the metal underneath. About 40 minutes later, I was happy with how the components were shaping up and was ready to move on to the assembly. Now, whilst digging out the Landspeeder, I came across some random bits which I think belong to the Ravenwing Speeder kit. I wasn't in a rush to convert a metal model, but if it looked good, I might incorporate some of these parts into the build. Looks like this was sculpted in '96. Using a combination of superglue and the odd bit of pinning here and there, the model went together surprisingly well. I based the model by supergluing large bits of cork, stones and general clutter to the base first. Then once that was dry, I coated the rest in PVA and gave the whole thing a good dip in my basing mix. I sealed the base with a watered down coat of PVA mixed with a few drops of isopropyl alcohol to break the surface tension. After that was dry, I headed outside to prime the model using Wraithbone spray. In my excitement to get this thing primed, I'd forgotten to tape over the flight stand. Oh well. I used Black Legion contrast paint to block in the black. I'd never used it before, and it's actually a brilliant way to quickly lay down a black base coat. With that done, I switched to Baal Red for the more orangey hue associated with Blood Angels. Inevitably a few slips were made along the way, but these would be no trouble to correct in the later stages. I then switched over to my nice brush and began the highlights using Wild Rider Red. I took my time here, lining all the panels and edges and making sure the paint was the right consistency throughout for a nice smooth transition. With the red out of the way, I used Dark Reaper for the black highlights, again taking my time and keeping the paint the right consistency with a bit of Lahman Medium. I then added a final edge highlight of Fenrisian Grey. I painted the yellow areas, like the vented nozzles of the Heavy Flamer and Multi-Melter, Iyanden yellow, and highlighted them up with a 50-50 mix of Avalon Sunset and Screaming Skull. With much of the speeder painted, I moved on to the crew, using pretty much the same methods as on their vehicle, except I added a wash of Agrax Earthshade to their recessed areas to give them a bit more depth. I painted the base Drakenhof Nightshade over a filter of Nuln Oil. I then added the transfers. After a few metallics and a tiny bit of sponge weathering, it was time for the final step, the flag. I followed an excellent tutorial from the Crown of Command that Josh recently made. With the banner painted and firmly fixed to the pole, I was ready to declare this Landspeeder ready for action. Overall, I'm happy with how this turned out, although the Baal Red contrast paint was probably not the right way to go, and perhaps with hindsight I should have given it a more traditional base coat like I did on my Rhino. so it won't be winning any painting competitions, but it's visually interesting, will look decent on the tabletop, and most importantly, fits nicely into my growing Blood Angel force. Oh, and given its massive engine, it just has to come equipped with the Supercharged Engine War Gear card as standard. Thank you for watching, especially to my subscribers and those of you that suggested I paint this model. I hope that was in some way what you were after. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to the channel, feel free to give it a like, and I love reading and replying to your comments. Happy hobbying, and I hope to see you next week for some cosmic horror.